Nini everyone, it's Mary here again. Um, I think my last video was on Friday. Yeah, and a lot of things have happened since then. I started my job, and I've been learning a lot through that. So it's kind of stressful, and I imagine you all know it can be stressful when you start a new job because you're not always exactly sure of what's expected of you, and the different requirements that there are for your new position. But I'm hoping that I can stay for a while and maybe make a career through this company that I'm working for. And I won't go too into that because obviously nobody's here to watch, my personal life. It's not a vlog per se, but it's just sort of an update. And maybe it's interesting. I have no idea for you guys, but I don't know. I don't know. It just feels like it's like, hey, this is what I've been doing. Okay. Um, I haven't really planned this one out since I've been so busy. But I did want to talk about Seth a little bit because I have mentioned in I think a few other videos that I do worship him. Um, and I imagine too that there are people here in the modern day who do worship him. Um, to me, he's a very interesting deity because he's just so unique compared to most other deities that you've come across, either through Kemetic mythology or, just through any pagan mythology in general, because you do have, gosh, like trickster deities and more destructive types of deities, throughout the world in different cultures. But Set always seems to be, in my experience, very, very special in that respect. So I guess I'll start off with my own experiences. When I grew up and started reading about Egyptian mythology, Set was obviously painted as a bad guy because obviously, some of the more well-recorded myths are those that the Greeks wrote about the ancient Kemetic um, myths, and a lot of them, Set was already demonized by then. So, when the Greeks reported this back to, their people, um, Set was already the bad guy who killed Osiris and tried to take over Egypt for himself and everything like that. But, you know, uh, after I started growing up and I revisited Egyptian mythology when I was older, and I wanted to kind of go back over it when I started practicing paganism, I started having a different view about Set. So, um, it took me a little while. I was going through, I sort of have a book of shadows, and granted, some of the stuff, especially in earlier times, makes me cringe because I was so naive back then about paganism, and I think hopefully I have a more nuanced belief about it all. But um, when I first started worshiping Set, I was a lot more Wicca flavored because I had not fully dedicated myself to um, Kemeticism at that point. But I did have an interest in, I guess, the darker side of paganism at that point, because even though, when I first got into paganism, uh, I would never really necessarily call myself a fluffy bunny. Um, and what I mean by that is, usually when I had always heard of fluffy bunny, and always described a person as somebody who emphasized positive aspects of divinity and religion at the exclusion of the more negative aspects. So it's like, love and light and peace and brotherhood and happiness, all those things, trumped anything having to do with death or shadow work or anything of the sort. So, but I've never been that kind of person myself. Obviously, I've mentioned before I have depression, so I'm more of a pessimistic type of person. a lot of the time, you know, depending on when you ask me, I will say the glass is half empty, or maybe sometimes if you catch me in a really bad mood, always empty. But I wanted to deal with the darker aspects of paganism in myself and spirituality, and that's one of the main reasons that I first contacted Seth in the first place. But I did a lot of, and initially when I did a lot of work with him and like meditations and stuff and contact rituals, I would often ask him, it's like, oh, to what extent is your destructiveness? And from what I have gathered through my own, and this is my own personal gnosis, you may disagree, but this is what I have experienced. Set is more the type of deity to deal, obviously he deals with storms, but I would say that he also deals with natural disasters and other destructive forces within nature, like radiation. But it's not to the extent that it's, how should I put this? So destructive that it would damage the fabric of existence. I mean, not something like world-ending. I think that's more in the realm of apep or apep or apophis. And this is what he told me. So, you know, obviously, you know, maybe somebody disagrees. And if you do, you know, don't jump down my throat or bite my head off. Because we all have different experiences when it comes to deities. But ever since then, I've worked with him a lot, generally in terms of trying to understand why bad things happen to good people, you know, different natural disasters within the world, and even like rebellion in terms of like Syria or Egypt or different things like that. I even remember this one meditation where I was talking to him about like corporations and the establishment. And in one part of that meditation, I saw him stomping on corporate logos. He doesn't very much like capitalism or the, you know, the way we deal with corporations these days. Um, but I've had some funny experiences concerning other practitioners about Set. And for the most part, like on the internet, I've had a good deal of good times with people talking about Set. It's the more real life stuff that I've had issues with. And but you know, it's pretty few and far between, obviously, because you know, like that one group I belong to, they're all eclectic, and most of them are all either Wiccan or Celtic. So nobody knows that much about Set, and or any other Egyptian deity for that matter. So I don't have that much of a problem with it. Usually, when somebody wants to know more stuff about the Natchadu, they come to me. It's like, you know, Mary's the resident Kemetic, so if you want to know about Egypt or Kemet, you go to her. So that's what the High Priestess just says. And, you know, I'll do my best to answer people's questions because I've studied it a good while. But anyway, I digress. I think I mentioned in a previous video that the eclectic group I belong to always holds a fundraiser in October. We call it the Witches Ball, and during the daytime it's like a craft fair where people can sell like pagan-y wares like incense and jewelry and candles and books and all sorts of crafts and all other such wonderful stuff. But also too, in the evening we also have a sort of a costume party. It's for Halloween. Anybody can come. And it's called the Witches Ball, even though like even though it's all of us witches there, everybody's welcome, and we're all dressed up as all sorts of different things. Like this last year I dressed up as a dead bride, so I was wearing this white dress in a veil, and I had my face all colored up pale, so I looked like a ghost. And my sister, she won the she won the female best costume award. She dressed up as a mermaid, and she made her own costume too, because she and I sew. She's a lot more craftier than I am, but gosh, which year was it? It was not this year, 2012, I think, October 2012, when I met this group of people. They weren't a part of the eclectic group. I belonged to. They were just members of the public, but they were pagans, and they were, I guess, Wiccan. Um, they told me that they had their own little coven, and it was like the Coven of Jehuti Thoth or something like that. And they, or like their leader, I forget his name because it's been quite a while ago. Um, when I told them that I was a Kemetic pagan, they were pretty enthusiastic and adamant. It's like, hey, why don't you come to our functions and our rituals, and you can join and everything like that. And for several weeks, the leader of the group was trying to get me to join through email. He's like, oh yeah, when are you going to be available? And at that time I was house sitting for a family quite far away, so I wasn't able at that time to attend any of their rituals. And at first I was interested in joining because it's like, well, hey, well, maybe I can go to a ritual or something, and see what they're like, and maybe I can make a decision from there. But as the night drew on, I was talking to them more about this, and I mentioned that I was a worshiper of Set, and the leader guy, he's like, oh. And from what he told me, he was a worshiper of Set, but he kind of described it kind of like if I don't know if you've ever seen those videos about being an ex-Satanist or whatever, but he had the same demeanor as if he were an ex-Satanist, or I guess in this case an ex-Setian, perhaps, per se. And that really threw me off and I was like, no, Seth's not bad. He's not the devil. And it kind of grew into sort of I agree to disagree with you. And I was actually kind of offended that he would say all that stuff to me, because the way he talked about it, he was like uber cool and uber mysterious about worshiping Set. But he's like, oh, I don't do it anymore. I'm totally good now. I'm like, dude, I still worship Set. I'm not evil. So, after that night, I went home and I thought about it for a little while, and he still kept giving me a few emails about it, asking, hey, when are you going to come over? You want some more info? That sort of thing. I'm like, and after a while, it's like, if they have that kind of difference about Set, what other kinds of theological differences do they have than I do? So, and from the looks of it, like, they were all in like robes and stuff when they were at a costume party. It's like, why didn't you guys wear like normal costumes and dress up as something instead of coming in your Wiccan gear? So I decided I wasn't gonna join. And it was probably around this summer when I met one of the other coven mates, and I know he was there because I used to go to high school with him too. And he said he had told me that he quit, and that I guess the reason why he quit, he called them a bunch of traitors. I don't know why. That's kind of a strong word for me. But apparently, I don't know if he was kicked out or he quit or whatever necessarily, but apparently the leader had a lot of problems with him practicing with people who were not in their coven. And as far as I can say about that, I guess it is what it is, but I'm kind of glad that I didn't join, because if the leader was that adamant about someone not practicing with, non-coven members, what would he have said about me worshiping a different deity, or a darker deity than apparently what he's comfortable with? So I don't know. That's one of the things that I think Set has instilled with me, to think for yourself and not toe the line when it comes to obedience to authority. And obviously everybody can get that because it's part of the myth against Set, you know, killing his brother who instilled civilization in the Egyptian people. And so, you know, not only is Set necessarily a deity of chaos and destruction, but he's also a deity of rebellion. And I don't mean rebellion in the sense that like evil and rebelling against Ra or something, but rebelling against an authority that needs to be rebelled against. Because not only does Set also destroy Osiris, but you know, without that, Hera would have never been able to ascend the throne. It would have always been Osiris. So um, Set is that to me, Set is that destructive force that, while it is destructive, it allows other things to grow in its place. He's sort of like a forest fire. There are certain species of trees that actually can't reproduce without the destructive power of a forest fire, because they need the heat to release their seeds. So without destruction, we can have no growth. And I think that's the duality that's created between Heru and Set. So I hope you enjoyed my little story and all my opinions about Set. And hopefully I'll see you next week. So thank you and some Nepti.